Welcome to the deep dive. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026.
And if you are anywhere near Washington, D.C. today, you absolutely feel the energy.
Oh, you really do. It's palpable.
Yeah, the streets are blocked off, there are motorcades everywhere, and news helicopters are just hovering.
Right, because it is the State of the Union address tonight.
The Super Bowl of American politics.
Supposedly, right. I mean, usually this is the night where we talk about the laundry list.
Yeah, the standard playbook.
You know, the president comes out, says the State of the Union is strong, lists like 10 things he wants Congress to do, shakes some hands and goes home.
Exactly.
But tonight feels different. The air just feels heavy.
It feels heavy because the speech, frankly, isn't the story.
Right.
The speech is really just a performance happening right in the middle of a massive structural car crash.
A collision.
A high-speed collision between the executive branch and the judiciary. And this just happened a few days ago.
Which is wild timing.
Totally. While everyone is setting up cameras in the House chamber, the real news, the thing that is actually rewriting the next 2 years of this presidency, happened across the street at the Supreme Court.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to look past the speech he is about to give tonight. We're looking at the ground crumbling beneath the administration's feet.
Because there is a lot of crumbling.
Right. So we've been going through a huge stack of AP news reports, legal analyses, and even some fascinating transcripts from the Canadian government.
Which we will absolutely get to because the Canadians are saying things that you almost never hear a friendly neighbor say.
Exactly. But let's start with the headline event. The thing that triggered all of this.
The Supreme Court ruling.
Right. I think most people probably saw the push notification on their phones, you know, court strikes down tariffs.
Sure.
But you and I were digging into the actual AP News reports, and the text of the opinion and the language is, well, it's striking.
It is brutal. Just completely brutal.
So set the table for us here. What exactly did the Supreme Court do?
Well, to understand the weight of this,
Yeah.
you really have to remember what these tariffs represent.
Right.
In Trump's second term, these tariffs weren't just a minor trade tool. They were the engine.
The core of the economic policy.
Exactly. They were the primary way the administration was projecting power globally and raising revenue domestically.
I think he called it the Iron Dome around the U.S. economy.
He did. It was the signature issue.
Mm.
So going into this, the expectation was that the Supreme Court would likely defer to the president.
Because of the conservative supermajority, right?
Right. A court that includes 3 justices Trump appointed himself.
And usually courts tend to give the executive a wide berth on this stuff.
Exactly. They usually say, well, national security is the president's lane. We're going to stay out of it.
The standard Article 2 powers argument.
Right. But they didn't do that here. They didn't just trim the policy around the edges or ask for some minor clarification. They struck the entire tariff regime down. And the specific word they used in the ruling is absolutely crucial.
This is the part that really stood out to me.
Yeah, they didn't just call it executive overreach. They explicitly declared the tariffs illegal.
I want to pause on that word for a second. Illegal.
Yeah.
Because usually in these high-level Supreme Court cases, you hear words like unconstitutional.
Right.
You hear violation of due process or executive overreach. But illegal sounds like something you get a parking ticket for.
Yeah, or worse.
It sounds criminal. Why did they use that specific word?
That is a fantastic catch, and it is really the key to understanding why this is such a disaster for the White House.
Okay.
If the court had said it was unconstitutional, it becomes this vague philosophical debate about the separation of powers.
Which politicians can spin all day long.
Exactly. But by saying it is illegal, they are saying the president violated a very specific statute.
The trade laws.
Right. They looked at the trade laws Congress passed, specifically the limitations on emergency economic powers, and essentially said you broke this written law.
So this wasn't just a disagreement over constitutional theory. This was them checking the receipt and saying you aren't allowed to buy this.
Precisely. It removes all the gray area. The majority opinion written by the conservatives said the president cannot just invent legislative authority because he wants to.
Wow.
And that creates a massive vulnerability going forward. Because if an executive action is legally defined as illegal, it opens the door for remediation.
Meaning fixing the damage.
Right. It means the government did something objectively wrong, and now they might have to fix it.
And the sting here isn't just the legal defeat itself. It is the personnel involved.
Oh, the betrayal factor is huge here.
We are talking about Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett.
The people he put on the bench. The people he famously touted as his greatest achievement.
His legacy.
He constantly said, I rebuilt the judiciary, And now those specific justices are the ones telling him no.
So based on the AP reporting, how did the president take this? I mean, I can guess, but what is the official reaction?
It was visceral. We aren't seeing a standard. We respectfully disagree with the court statement.
Not at all.
Not a gore. Trump was quoted directly expressing rage. He actually said that justices who voted against him were an embarrassment to their families.
An embarrassment to their family.
Think about the weight of that. He didn't say their legal logic was flawed.
Right?
He didn't say they misunderstood the global economy. He attacked their personal honor and their families.
That feels so fundamentally different than just standard political bluster. That sounds like a completely burned bridge.
It is scorched earth.
Yeah.
And it sets the stage for tonight perfectly.
Because of the room.
Yes. He has to walk into the House chamber, stand at the podium, and look down at these people. The very people he just called an embarrassment.
Sitting right there in the front row.
Exactly.
Well, if they even show up, which we will definitely get to the seating chart drama in a bit. But I want to pivot to the political fallout.
It's massive.
Because usually a court ruling happens, the administration grumbles, and the news cycle moves on. But according to the AP reports, the Democrats are absolutely not letting this go.
No, they smell blood in the water.
And they have launched this entirely new demand. They aren't just celebrating the win and saying stop the tariffs. They are actively demanding the administration refund the money.
This is, frankly, the political pivot of the year.
Let's really break this down. Because on the surface, it sounds great, right? Hey, the government took money illegally, give it back.
Sure.
But practically speaking, what are the Democrats actually asking for here?
They are demanding that the Treasury Department refund billions of dollars.
Billions.
Billions.
Mm-hmm.
Money collected under these now illegal tariffs over the last year. The core argument is incredibly simple. If the collection of the money was illegal, the retention of the money is basically theft.
Okay, but let's look at the mechanics of this. Who actually gets that money?
Right.
If I bought a toaster at the store that was 20% more expensive because of a tariff, do I get a refund check in the mail?
See, that is where the Democrats are playing a very clever, very cynical game. The answer is no. You do not get a check.
Right. The consumer doesn't see a dime directly.
Exactly. The refund by law would go to the importer of record.
The corporations?
The companies. Walmart, Target, the massive steel importers who originally paid those customs duties at the ports.
So the Democrats, who normally position themselves as the party of the working class, are currently fighting tooth and nail to hand billions of dollars back to massive multinational corporations.
On paper, yes, that is exactly what they are doing.
Which sounds politically risky.
It would be, but politically they are completely reframing it.
Right.
They are framing it as a pocketbook issue for the average American.
How so?
They are going on television and saying the president stole from the American economy. He illegally drove up prices for your family, and we are going to make him pay it back.
So it frames the administration as thieves.
It is a brilliant narrative device.
It is a total trap.
Think about the impossible position this puts the White House in right now.
Yeah, walk us through the administration's options here.
If Trump comes out and says, no, I'm keeping the money.
Then he is essentially admitting to keeping ill-gotten gains.
Right. He looks like he is openly defying the Supreme Court and the law again.
Which plays right into the Democrats' hands.
But if he says, yes, we will refund it, he blows a massive hole in his own federal budget.
Because that money isn't just sitting in a vault.
No, we are talking about billions of dollars that have likely already been spent or allocated to other programs.
So he either looks like a crook defying the courts, or he bankrupts his own treasury.
Exactly. And let's say he does agree to it. The administrative nightmare of actually calculating those refunds.
That would be impossible.
It would take years.
Yeah.
It would completely paralyze the Treasury Department.
And the Democrats have to know this, right?
Of course they do. They know the actual refunds probably won't happen anytime soon. The demand for them, the constant drumbeat of refund the billions, dominates the news cycle.
It completely forces Trump on the defensive.
He has to spend his State of the Union tonight playing defense, playing accountant, rather than looking like a visionary leader.
It effectively steals his microphone before he even speaks.
It turns what he called his greatest economic victory into a massive, toxic financial liability.
And based on the AP's sources, it isn't just the domestic opposition piling on here.
No, it's global.
I was really struck by the reporting on the international reaction to this ruling. Usually when a U.S. president takes a political hit at home, foreign leaders are very cautious.
Oh, I stay out of it.
They don't want to interfere or anger whoever is in the Oval Office. You usually get the standard "we are monitoring the situation closely" type of statement.
Very diplomatic.
But then you have Canada,
Our famously polite neighbors to the north.
specifically the Premier of Ontario. Now, for listeners who don't follow Canadian politics closely, Ontario is essentially the economic engine of Canada.
Right.
It is the manufacturing hub. It is where the auto industry lives. So what the Premier there says really matters on the world stage.
That carries a lot of weight.
And he did not hold back at all.
No Premier Doug Ford came out publicly and said, quote, "The walls are closing in on Trump."
The walls are closing in. That sounds like something a partisan pundit says on cable news, not a sitting foreign leader.
It is incredibly undiplomatic. It breaks all the normal rules, but it reveals exactly what the rest of the world is actually thinking behind closed doors.
They are watching the domestic chaos.
They are looking at this Supreme Court ruling. They are looking at the massive refund demands from the Democrats, and they are seeing a wounded animal.
But why does a ruling on tariffs make him look weak internationally? I mean, from the outside, isn't it just a domestic legal squabble over trade law?
Because the tariffs were his big stick.
Ah.
That was how he threatened other countries into compliance. His entire foreign policy leverage was based on do what I want or I will heavily tax your cars, steal your agriculture.
Right, the Iron Dome.
If the Supreme Court takes that bat away from him, he suddenly loses his main point of leverage. Canada sees that. The European Union sees that. China sees that.
So when the Premier says the walls are closing in, he is basically signaling to the world, we don't have to be afraid of this guy's threats anymore because his own domestic courts just stopped him.
Exactly. It signals a fundamental shift in the global power dynamic.
Wow.
If Trump cannot deliver on his economic threats because they are now deemed illegal, then he becomes a paper tiger.
Which has to be terrifying for an administration built on strength.
For a president who relies entirely on projecting dominance, it is the worst possible perception.
So just looking at the landscape, we have the severe legal rebuke from his own judges.
Yep.
We have the refund trap set by the Democrats draining his political capital.
Right.
And we have international allies openly dismissing his authority. That is the cocktail he is drinking right before he walks down the aisle into the House chamber tonight.
It is a very bitter drink.
Let's talk about the room itself. Because the State of the Union is pure theater.
Always.
It is all about the optics. Who stands, who claps, who looks at their phone during the speech. But tonight, the absolute peak of the tension is going to be about who is sitting in that front row.
The Supreme Court attendance question. It is the drama of the night.
We know from the reports Trump just called them an embarrassment to their families. Do we actually think they show up to sit in front of him?
It is the million-dollar question in Washington today.
What's the precedent for this?
Well, historically, the court really tries to stay above the political fray. They tend to show respect for the government as a whole, but it has been getting much harder in recent years. You remember the Justice Alito incident?
The not true moment.
Right back in 2010, President Obama is speaking. He directly criticizes the Citizens United ruling during the speech, and the camera cuts to Justice Alito shaking his head and mouthing the words "not true."
Right in the middle of the address.
Exactly. Alito felt totally ambushed. He felt like he was invited to a formal dinner just to be publicly yelled at on television.
And he hasn't been back since, right?
He hasn't come back since. Justice Thomas also rarely attends these events anymore.
And last year, the AP noted only 4 of them actually went.
Right. It was Roberts, Kagan, Kavanaugh, and Barrett.
And there was that really weird moment last year, too.
Oh, yeah. Trump was walking down the aisle. He looked right at Chief Justice Roberts and clearly said, "Thank you again."
Which everyone in the room and watching at home immediately interpreted as thanks for the presidential immunity rulings.
Which is a complete disaster for the court's credibility.
It makes them look totally compromised.
It makes them look like political operatives for the executive branch. Now, Trump's team tried to walk it back later, saying he just meant thanks for swearing me in at the inauguration, but absolutely nobody bought that excuse.
So now fast forward to tonight.
Right.
He is definitely not saying thank you again. He is furious.
He is a raging.
If Kavanaugh and Barrett, the very justices he appointed, sit there tonight, they are sitting just feet away from a man who is publicly questioning their competence and their family's honor.
If I were advising them, I would tell them not to go.
Really?
But if they don't go, it looks like they are actively boycotting the president, which is a massive political statement in itself.
They are completely damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Exactly.
And what if he goes off script tonight? That is my genuine fear, or maybe my fascination. What if he literally points at them from the podium?
It is entirely possible. We know he loves having a visible villain.
And right now, they are public enemy number one.
Right now, the illegal tariff ruling is the biggest villain in his entire narrative. If he points a finger at the Chief Justice tonight and says the courts are stopping us from making America rich, that entire chamber is going to explode.
Speaking of the chamber exploding, what about the Democrats' strategy for tonight? Because last year was a total circus.
It really was.
The AP recap noted there were heckling people holding up signs saying things like Save Medicaid or false. Representative Al Green actually got ejected for yelling.
And honestly, it played very badly for the Democrats.
It looked disorganized.
It looked chaotic. And politically, it allowed Trump to look like the victim of an unhinged mob.
So what is the play this time around? With the refund demands hanging in the air, how do they act in the room?
The official word coming down from Democratic leadership on the Hill is absolute restraint.
So they're going for boring.
Strategic boredom. They want to let the president's current failures and the massive legal news speak for themselves.
That makes sense.
The strategy is simple. Do not distract the media from his bad news. If the headlines tomorrow morning are Democrats heckle Trump, then nobody is talking about the illegal tariffs or the billions in refund demands.
Right. They lose the narrative.
But if the Democrats sit there in stony, complete silence, just staring at him, the media focus remains entirely on his words, his anger, and his political weakness.
It is basically the gray rock method. Just be completely uninteresting so the other person spins out on their own.
Exactly. And some Democrats aren't even going.
Right, the boycotts.
There are formal boycotts planned. Others are attending rival counter events in their home districts. But for the members actually sitting in the room, the strict instruction is do not take the bait.
And following the speech, the official Democratic response is coming from Abigail Spanberger.
Yes, the newly inaugurated governor of Virginia.
Which is really interesting casting by the party. She is not a firebrand. She is not a squad member.
No, she is a former CIA officer.
Very moderate, very focused on governance and national security.
It heavily reinforces their adults in the room narrative. While Trump is potentially raging about judges and families on primetime television, she is going to calmly talk about the rule of law, the Constitution, and fiscal responsibility regarding these refunds.
It is a very deliberate contrast play.
Completely deliberate.
Now, Trump is obviously going to try to ignore all of this structural chaos and talk about his wins. He is going to pivot hard to the economy.
He always does. He currently claims he has completely solved the affordability crisis created by the previous administration.
Which is a very bold claim, given what people are still paying for basic groceries.
It is a claim that is completely disconnected from the actual economic data and voter sentiment.
Right.
The disconnect is the key word here. The stock market might be doing fine, reacting to corporate tax cuts or whatever, but the average voter is still incredibly anxious about the cost of living.
Prices remain the central challenge for the GOP right now.
They do. And that disconnect is extremely dangerous for a sitting president. If you go on national television and tell people you have never had it so good and they're actively struggling to pay their rent, you don't sound triumphant.
You sound completely out of touch.
Exactly. And we actually saw this play out in real time in Georgia last week.
Right. The AP reported on that trip. It was supposed to be a highly focused economic victory lap.
Look at the factories, look at the jobs. That was the script.
But it totally derailed.
He couldn't stick to the script. Within minutes, he ended up completely off-prompter ranting about election fraud from years ago.
He just plays the greatest hits, even when the audience desperately wants to hear the new material about inflation.
And that, frankly, terrifies the Republican leadership in Congress.
Because their majority is hanging by a thread.
They know their grip on the House is tenuous at best. If the upcoming midterms become a referendum on the cost of living, they are in deep trouble.
And if it becomes a referendum on his personal grievances with the Supreme Court?
Then they are in catastrophic trouble. They need him to stay on message tonight, and nobody believes he actually will.
I want to touch on something else from the AP reports that might come up tonight, or honestly might be conspicuously absent from the speech.
Okay.
Immigration.
Yeah.
Usually this is the absolute red meat of a Trump speech. Build the wall, deport them all, the standard tough talk.
That's your rally material.
But there was a massive tragedy recently in Minneapolis that has really complicated this narrative for the White House.
This is a critical story, and it requires a bit of a deep dive because the specific details really matter here.
Walk us through it.
We are talking about the recent shooting deaths of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis.
U.S. citizens, not undocumented immigrants.
Correct. 2 American citizens. And this happened during a highly aggressive federal immigration enforcement operation.
What exactly happened?
The federal unit involved was BORTAC,
What is BORTAC for those who don't know?
It stands for Border Patrol Tactical Unit.
Okay.
These are essentially the highly militarized SWAT teams of the Border Patrol. They are specially trained to deal with armed cartels, drug runners, and heavy fire situations in the desert.
So combat situations.
Right. They are absolutely not typically trained for routine door-knocking operations in a quiet Minneapolis suburb.
So why on earth were they deployed there?
That is the core of the political controversy. The administration has been deliberately surging these militarized BORTAC units in the northern sanctuary cities to send a tough political message.
A show of force.
Exactly. But the problem is when you use a massive hammer, everything looks like a nail. They went incredibly hard things, rapidly escalated, and 2 American citizens ended up dead in the crossfire.
That instantly destroys the administration's entire law and order argument, doesn't it?
It absolutely shatters it. It terrifies suburban voters.
Right.
It is one thing for a voter to broadly support border security. It is a completely different thing to have federal paramilitary units showing up in your cul-de-sac and shooting your neighbors.
And does the administration recognize politically what a disaster this is?
They are completely scrambling behind the scenes. According to the reporting, they are actively drawing down agents in Minneapolis right now.
Really? Retracting them?
Yes, and even more telling, Trump reportedly had a phone call with Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York.
A prominent Democrat.
Right. And he explicitly told her he would only send these federal enforcement surges, quote, where they were wanted.
Where they were wanted. That is a massive walk back from his usual rhetoric.
It is a full-blown retreat. It shows that the political cost of this militarized hardline approach has finally outweighed the base-pleasing benefit.
Wow.
So tonight during the speech, listen very closely. Does he double down on the invasion rhetoric like he used to? Or does he largely gloss over domestic enforcement?
If he is quiet on immigration, we know it is directly because of the fallout from Minneapolis.
Exactly. It shows a presidency in severe damage control mode.
And speaking of damage control, there is the rest of the world. We already mentioned Canada and the tariffs, but there are much hotter fires burning right now globally.
Foreign policy is a massive vulnerability for him tonight, Iran being the biggest one.
I feel like I have total whiplash watching the administration's policy on Iran.
We all do.
One day, the president is at a rally saying he completely obliterated their nuclear facilities. The next day, he is issuing statements warning that bad things will happen if we don't desperately reach a new nuclear deal.
It highlights the sheer incoherence of the policy.
Which is it.
Right. He desperately wants to be seen as the isolationist peacemaker who ends conflicts, but he simultaneously wants to be seen as the toughest military guy in the room.
You can't really be both at the same time.
You can't. If you publicly claimed you successfully destroyed their nuclear capability last month, why are you now warning the world of an imminent nuclear breakout?
It heavily implies the first military strike was a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you look at Ukraine and Gaza, the wars there continue to rage violently, despite his repeated campaign promises of quick 24-hour fixes.
And then there's Venezuela.
Oh, Venezuela.
I feel like we all collectively hallucinated the last 2 months of news. U.S. Special Forces literally snatched Nicolas Maduro, right?
They did.
Yeah.
It was a direct, heavily armed
Yeah.
regime change operation less than 2 months ago.
And now what?
Well, Trump is essentially claiming he's going to run the country, or at least directly oversee the transition government.
That sounds exactly like the kind of massive nation-building project he hates.
It is exactly what he aggressively campaigned against for 8 years. No more forever wars, no more fixing other people's broken
What
countries.
about America first?
And now he basically owns Venezuela. He owns their shattered economy. He owns the political instability, and he owns the massive power vacuum we created.
It is a massive quagmire just waiting to happen.
It is.
So if you step back and look at the entire map for a second, the Supreme Court has legally cut off his primary revenue stream with the tariffs. The Democrats are using that ruling to demand he empty the federal treasury with billions in refunds.
Right.
International allies like Canada are openly mocking his weakness. The domestic economy is making voters anxious.
Yeah.
His signature immigration crackdown has turned lethal for American citizens. And he's currently stuck managing a foreign policy swamp in South America.
When you lay it all out like that, it is a stark picture of an administration that is completely overextended and rapidly losing support.
Is there literally any good news for him in these AP reports tonight? Any clear political wins he can point to?
Well, there was one small legal victory buried in the news cycle amidst all these losses.
What's that?
A federal judge officially blocked the release of the Jack Smith report.
Okay, this is the special counsel report regarding the classified documents case.
Right. It was heavily anticipated and was supposed to drop publicly this week.
Which would have been brutal timing.
Imagine if that massive report, with all the damaging details of exactly what classified materials he had stored in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, had come out the exact same week as the Supreme Court calling his tariffs illegal.
It would have been total system overload for the White House press team.
Completely. So keeping that report legally buried for now is definitely a strategic win.
But even his wins right now are really just bad things not happening yet.
Exactly. It isn't a positive, proactive achievement he can brag about tonight. It is just a temporary delay of execution.
And just to add a little bit of cultural flavor to the overall misery of this week, nobody actually wants to come to his party tonight.
The State of the Union RSVPs are looking incredibly thin.
We saw the report about the U.S. women's gold medal team,
They formally declined the White House invitation to attend the speech.
which historically speaking is a really big deal.
Huge.
The Olympic champions usually sit up in the gallery next to the First Lady. It is the easiest, most bipartisan, patriotic photo op a president gets.
But they said no. It is a massive cultural vibe check. When the star athletes, the major pop culture figures, and even the musicians like the Isaac Hayes estate recently settling a lawsuit accusing Trump of unauthorized song use at his rallies, when all these cultural touchstones are collectively saying stay away from us, it heavily reinforces his political isolation.
He is basically operating in a bunker.
He really is.
Yeah.
There's this constant low-level hum of legal and cultural pushback surrounding him at all times.
So let's bring it all home for the listener. We have people who are going to turn on their televisions tonight.
Right.
They're going to see the polished teleprompter speech, the standing ovations from his side of the aisle, the grand pageantry of the room. What should they actually be watching for?
Honestly, don't look at the teleprompter. Ignore the text of the speech.
Look at the room.
Look at the faces in the crowd. Look to see if those Supreme Court justices are actually sitting there taking it. Look at the Democrats sitting on their hands, refusing to engage.
Really look for the friction.
Look for the harsh reality operating behind the pageant. The reality is that the structural checks and balances of the American political system are violently grinding their gears right now.
Because for a long time, people really thought the system was completely broken.
They did. They thought a remarkably strong personality could just indefinitely steamroll over the courts and the legislature.
And for a while, it honestly looked like that was true.
It did look true. But this specific week, with the AP reporting we are seeing, this system woke up.
Big time.
The Supreme Court finally looked at a core policy and explicitly said illegal. The Democratic opposition finally found a massive fiscal pressure point with the billions in tariff refunds.
And the international allies stopped being polite about the leverage.
Exactly. So tonight is absolutely not a victory lap for a second term.
Yeah.
It is a grueling survival test.
It is a president trying to frantically talk his way out of a very tight corner.
On live television.
Well, here's the final thought I really want to leave you with as you watch the coverage tonight. And it goes all the way back to that specific word, illegal.
Go on.
If the Supreme Court, including a conservative supermajority and his own hand-picked appointees, is now willing to strike down the absolute core pillar of his economic agenda.
The thing he loves most.
Right. What else are they willing to strike down next? Are we currently watching the dramatic end of the so-called imperial presidency?
That's a great question.
Or, and this is the darker possibility, does a massive legal rebuke like this just push a man like Donald Trump to find a way to circumvent the law entirely?
Does he finally respect the stop sign? Or does he just put his foot on the gas and drive straight through it?
That is exactly what we're going to find out over the next year.
It is going to be an incredibly bumpy ride.
Thanks for diving in with us today. Enjoy the speech tonight, or at least enjoy watching the drama unfold.
We will see you on the other side.